how do I protect my portfolio? How do I take out insurance on my portfolio if there was to be a downturn?
Yeah.
Actually,
This is
let me go first because I've got a really simple answer.
great.
But the real answer is your more complex one. Like the really simple answer is I just have a bigger cash allocation. That, like Barbara, that's my insurance, and I vary my cash. And if I think valuations as a whole are probably stretched, and I think we're getting to that territory, I'm going to start increasing my cash allocation. I did that just by selling 1% of Palantir last week, and I'm going to start trimming some other things soon. And by having more cash, if stuff goes down, well, the cash becomes more useful. I can redeploy it at cheaper valuations. So there's a simple answer, but there is a more sophisticated answer, which Christoph is going to run you through.
To your point, that does involve a little market timing, but it's balanced out by the whole sleep well at night quotient. If you think things are, or I'll say it this way: if you've already made a good chunk of money, the whole point is to make the chunk of money. It's not to make even more obscene amounts of money that you really didn't think would happen or you would need. Then it does make sense to market time and say, okay, I've accomplished what I was set to accomplish. You take some off the table, you sleep better at night, and now your cash is that insurance that when the market drops, you actually are, I'm not sure if excited, but you don't feel that upset because you're like, oh, I get to reinvest this for much cheaper, right? That's how that works. Cash as insurance. Uh, I would I would offer two alternating strategies that use options as insurance. Because I say this all the time. In the options market, there's a buyer and there's a seller, just like when you buy literal insurance. So let me repeat that analogy. When you have a car, you're forced to buy insurance, right? Money leaves your account and goes into the account of the insurance company, and it pays out when things go bad. Otherwise, you don't get that money back, and you know you're not getting it back. Hopefully you're not getting it back, right? Because hopefully you don't get in a car accident. So it's a deal you're willing to make up front for peace of mind. One of the ways you can have some insurance is to sell calls on your positions. So what that means is, and I'm not this does get complicated pretty quick, but once you think a position has reached fair valuation and you're ready to sell it, an alternative could be that you sell call options, meaning you collect premium from somebody else, and that says you pick a price that you would be legitimately happy to sell those shares at. So let's say it's $20 for company X, right? Instead of going to the market makers today and just selling them outright, you sell a contract to somebody else. They pay you, you get money. So you've basically collected. I'm calling that insurance. And then if that company then exceeds that price, you sell at that price, they get your shares, but you keep the premium. If the company does not exceed that price, then you keep your shares and you get to sell call options in the future. Now, in general, I've won and lost a lot using this. I've won when it's a company that I legitimately want to get rid of, but I just got rid of it with a little extra in the pocket for a little higher. But I've also lost because I decided to sell shares I'm sorry, covered calls on a company that had a huge growth rate. And then, of course, it kept going up. And basically, I didn't really want to sell that company. So this works more for the sort of steady, for the steady companies. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's almost, I know you're going to come on to another version, but this is a bit like the opposite of the thing you described at the past, because in this way, kind of, you're almost becoming a version of the insurer. You're getting paid, like you're receiving dollars in your account, and you'll keep that money as long as stock prices stay kind of relatively flat, depending on kind of
Or go down,
or go down. Yeah,
or go
um,
down.
yeah. And if things go up, then you'll end up selling. your shares at a discount. Like you'll lose a bit of money when those options get exercised. So
Yeah.
you're being paid money today, which you'll only keep if stuff remains relatively steady or goes down. So that's kind of like where the insurance bit comes in. It's almost like you're almost like the anti-insurer for someone else.
Yeah, this is just I'll rephrase this a little bit. Selling calls on companies you own that you're happy to sell at the price, at the, call it, overextended price. This is just a way to squeeze a little extra money on top of where you're okay selling it anyway, because you're collecting a premium above the price that you'd be happy to sell. So this is like insurance light, right? Um, no, you need to have at least 100 shares of a company to sell a covered call. So for some people, that this might not apply. But the real, what I would call full on insurance, would be almost the exact opposite. You would buy puts. Puts and calls are the two option vehicles, main option vehicles, and you could either buy or sell them. We talked about selling calls where you get the premium. When you're buying puts, you're giving money to, call it, the market. So you're paying for that insurance. But if things go down, then your puts increase in value. So if you have, just, I'm going to use an arbitrary number here. If you have a portfolio of, say, call it $100,000, you may decide that you are okay losing, say, 5% of that portfolio, meaning it losing via insurance. So you would then do some math, right? 5% of 100,000 would be $5,000. And you would say, okay, if I lose $5,000 relative to the other 95 that I own, no big deal. That's how insurance works. And you would buy $5,000 worth of puts in some vehicle that will go, that you expect to drop. And as that vehicle drops, your puts go up in value. So your $5,000 would go up to 6,000, 7,000, 12,000, whatever it may be. And the common way of doing that is you pick an index. What I would do right now, given where the AI bubble lives, it lives on the NASDAQ index, right? So I would pick a NASDAQ index that kind of maps all of the frothiest companies and buy puts on that. So a common way of doing that, just to throw out one ticker, is QQQ. That kind of tracks the techie stuff. And then I would buy, I don't know, then you have to consider the date, right? The date of this, because options lose value. So let's say you buy the insurance for a full year because you don't want to get really cute, right? Thinking it's going to be 3 weeks from now, because you're not going to get that right. So a year from now, you buy $5,000 worth of those puts. Market does drop, those puts go up in value, and you've therefore hedged or protected some of your portfolio. And obviously, if the market continues going up, well, you lose the 5,000 bucks essentially, but your portfolio, the other 95% of it, is now worth more. And then you could repeat the process when the bubble's even loftier, or something like that.
And that's much more like the sort of traditional concept of insurance. You spend a bit of money now in the hope that you don't cash in. But if your house burns down, if your portfolio explodes, then you can cash in your insurance policy and hopefully get back like a chunk of that money.
And to go back in our time machine badge, remember when poor humble monkey, all the moves he was making in the first year of our show backfired spectacularly. I won't mention the Rocket Lab call that expired at zero again, haunts me. But I also bought a bunch of puts in KRE and BAC, and that was because I was fairly convinced that the commercial real estate bubble was gonna pop. And for a little while, things were looking really, really, really dire. But that did not happen. The banks printed more money, and for whatever reason, that still, the fates kept the commercial real estate titans afloat. But that was a bet I was willing to make. I lost thousands of dollars, but that's how insurance works. So right now, I would be thinking in that way. Your task as a listener would be, yeah, find things that you think are likely to go down when the market flips.